Well, good evening and welcome to the Arbor Hills Nature Preserve in Plano, Texas. Tonight's exercise is part one of a two-part evaluation of the PowerTac Warrior G4-FL. This is the 4200 lumen flood. I want to first thank PowerTac for providing me with a unit for evaluation, as well as a generous discount code to people who watch these videos, and I'm including the discount code in the video description. Now, tonight's exercise is relatively simple. We're going to be taking the unit out in the field, seeing what it looks like, but I'm also going to use this as an opportunity to talk about how I select lights for use in search and rescue applications, because there are some misconceptions out there that I want to clear up, and I want to let people know that, anyone who's looked at my previous videos knows that my use case is night search and rescue. And so I want to talk about how I actually select lights and why, for example, I have my lights mounted in this configuration. This is what I call my grab and go. I have everything preloaded, ready to move very quickly, be able to work in a variety of different conditions. And I know you got a lot of questions. I've got the PowerTac set up right here on the top left shoulder. The way I have these set up with the Velcro straps, they're very sturdy. They're not going anywhere, but it's very easy to change lights out and change locations. So I have this mounted on my left shoulder right now. When I film the second part of the review, which will be out at the LBJ grasslands, and I do a full-on search and rescue training exercise, I'll probably switch these around. But I know you don't want to listen to me drone on and on and on. You want to see the light, you want to see turbo, and more turbo. So I'm going to finish getting geared up and let's get out there. Okay, here's our first look at the PowerTac Warrior G4 4200 lumen in turbo. We still have some residual light off in the background from the sunset and the fact that we're inside a nature preserve that is inside city limits. Now, as soon as I say search and rescue, most people will say, hey, wait a minute, don't you guys use those really big, heavy, 10, 15, 20,000 lumen lights? And yes, there are use cases for those form factors. So what I want to talk about in each of these segments as we take a look at the light is, how do I actually make that choice? One of the first acronyms that you learn in search and rescue is called SMEAC, which stands for Situation, Mission, Execution, Administration, and Communications. Situation and mission drive execution, which in turn drives my loadout. Now, I don't want to flash light in this guy's eyes, so I'm going to end this segment and we'll pick up the discussion shortly. All right, situation could be anything from we're searching for two lost hikers, a lost hunter, a lost child. Missions are going to vary based on whether I'm working solo or I'm working as part of a team. I could be working, when we come to the administration part, on the request of law enforcement. I could be working on behalf of the child's family. So, execution, I'm going to take this one step at a time. How do I choose a light? When would I use those, big, heavy form factors versus lighter weight, smaller form factors? And again, we're looking exclusively at the Warrior 4200 lumen turbo. When I film these segments, that's the only light I'm going to be using in part one of this evaluation. Part two, which is, like I say, a full-on search and rescue training op, I will be using all of my lighting systems in tandem, just as I would in a real deployment. So there are three basic considerations that I use. The first is theoretical length of throw versus average line of sight. And what I'm looking to do is avoid mismatches. So Let's suppose I have a light that can throw 1,000 yards, maybe even 1,200 yards, something like, the Phoenix LR80R, 18,000 lumens, 1,130 meter theoretical throw. Well, if I'm searching in an environment where I have average line of sight of 150 yards, that's a mismatch. Now, on the other hand, what if I'm part of a team searching at, let's say, Russell Creek Park in Plano, massive, wide open area, athletic complexes everywhere. There's so many places I could just stand at that park, and no matter where I turn, I've got 500 to 1,000 yards line of sight. Well, if I'm working with a flashlight that has a theoretical 150-foot throw, again, we have a mismatch. So that's part of the balance, and that would be the first consideration that I look on. Well, let's move further on into the preserve and get another view of this PowerTac. Consideration number 2, detection versus identification. Now, this will depend on both the distance and the qualitative illumination properties of my light, as well as real-time conditions on the ground. For example, is the air pristine and clear? Is there a lot of dust in the air? And it will also depend on my personal vision. Now, consider a situation where I'm looking over a very, very wide open area. Maybe it has 400 to 500 yards line of sight. Detection is, I can see that there's something out on the ground that has an orangish hue that does not belong with the surrounding territory, but I can't tell you what it is. Identification is the process of being able to conclusively state that that's just a piece of junk that blew out there and got stuck, versus that is the orange jacket of the person that we are searching for. Search and rescue is all about making precise identifications. I don't want to take action on detection. I want to take action on PID, or positive identification. Now, there are really only two ways that I can turn detection into identification. One is I can invest time and energy and physically close the distance. That also has increased risk of mechanical injury if I have to make my way out into wide open, ungroomed terrain. The other preferred method is to use a magnified optic, and I most often use a Vortex Optics Solo RT. Now, the greater the length of illumination of the light, the more magnification I'm going to need in order to make positive identification. Not only is that another piece of gear I have to carry, anyone who has ever shot rifle offhand with an optic knows what I'm talking about when I say that wobble is a serious concern. So I also need another piece of gear to help stabilize the light and the optic. Of course, different lights have different capabilities, both in terms of detection and ID. For example, I may use two different lights together like I'm doing tonight. All right, what does 4,200 lumens look like going through the trees? That shadow is a strap from my helmet. Let me move that out of the way. Wearing my helmet kind of loose tonight. All right, consideration number 3, probably the most important of all, and that is weight. I'm a ground-based element. I don't have the luxury of loading gear onto a horse, an ATV, or a bike. If I want to take it with me, I carry it. Ounces or pounds, pounds or pain. And so weight is probably the biggest consideration of all. That is, anything in my loadout has to justify its weight cost. And that's the biggest drawback of the large form factors. There's some magnificent lights out there. I mentioned that LR80R. If you want to look at real monsters, the Olight X9R, 25,000 lumens, That thing is monstrous, over 4 pounds. I nicknamed that Bigfoot's lightsaber, because that's exactly the form factor that if Bigfoot carried a lightsaber, that's what it would look like. But those lights have their place, as long as they can justify their weight cost. When I look at most wilderness environments, I have less than 200 yards line of sight on average. I have to carry everything everywhere I go. Well, with that weight budget, I can carry this 4200 lumen flood that I have now, which gives me decent downrange visibility, and I have good side-to-side visibility, no overwhelming hot spots, so I can immediately turn right here to the trees, search back into the trees. I know it probably doesn't show up great on the camera, but I've got fantastic visibility back into the trees. I have no problem with any of the reflections, even with my light-sensitive eyes. So all of those considerations together, you know, something that throws 200 yards, man, that's the point that I've got to think about bringing a magnified optic with me for identification. So I tend to gravitate towards the smaller, lighter form factors, and that allows me to carry multiple items with equivalent or lesser weight budget. I mean, the 2 lights I have on my ruck right now are very light, even with batteries installed. That gives me both a flood and a spot as options, and I can bring those 2 together and have over 7,000 lumens into play out to, you know, 200, 250 yards easily. Then I can even add my favorite, which is that an owl? No, sorry. Got distracted. I can add thermal night vision. My go-to device is a Pulsar Axion XM38. And so for equivalent or less weight, I can have 2 flashlights, allows me to move quickly, and I can add thermal night vision on top of that. So I'm going to move on down the path here. There's another element I want to show the light off. And each of these segments has been, you know, at least a couple of minutes, maybe more. And let me feel right now. I mean, this Warrior's just now starting to get warm. And even then, not very warm. And it's maybe 58, 59 degrees outside. So there are a lot of lights out there that if you've been running on turbo for this long, they would have really heated up. Let me check it one more time. I mean, I'm barely noticing a sensation of warmth right now. So to me, that's a pretty good sign. I'm using these lights attached to the straps of my ruck. Like right now, I'm walking completely hands-free. Right here are my hands. I'm not touching the light. I'm not doing anything. So I can turn my body, search. I could make notations in a notebook right now. I could bring a second light into play. Now I've got 2 lights working downrange simultaneously, a bit of a shadow because of one of the mounts on my helmet. But my point is I can work multiple gear items simultaneously with this setup. But if you're running handheld and the light's going to start burning your hand after 1 to 2 minutes, then that's a real downside. Let me put it up here one more time. I mean, it's just barely a hint of warm. I could hold that in my hand and hardly even notice it. So for those of you who are into handheld operation, there's a data point for you. Okay, this is one of my favorite areas of the preserve. It's also a really good test for lights. Now I'm never sure how things show up on camera, but I've got great visibility to the trees at the turn of the little creek there. Let me move around just a little bit more. I'm going to make this my summary segment. You know, this is kind of like what I would do for a second evaluation before I decide whether or not I want to take a light out and do a real search and rescue training exercise with it. This is exactly what I want from a flood. Nice, smooth, even illumination. Now, I've noticed if there are particulates and dust in the air, yeah, you get a bit of a hot spot, but it's very easy to quickly pair it with a spot. Like I say, I can bring over 7,000 lumens into play in a single area, but I still have excellent situational awareness, excellent side to side. That's why I like all of these options. They're lightweight, easy to carry, easy on the feet. That's a big deal because in the second part of this evaluation, I'm going to introduce something I call survivability index. Survivability, well, I really call it the survivability clock. Not really a clock, it moves inversely with time, so as time moves forward, survivability goes down. So when I'm teaching people, the idea of a clock or the idea of a countdown timer is very familiar. So I just say the survivability clock is counting down. That just means, if you were to look at it more mathematically, which people tend to hate, the probability of survival is going down as time moves forward, especially when we get out into wilderness environments in the winter. It's cold, you have hypothermia, possible dehydration, injury, other exaggerating factors. All these things come into play. So as time moves forward, survivability moves down. That's why I like to be able to move light and quick, particularly in areas with which I already have familiarity, because time is the ultimate deciding factor in everything, not necessarily theoretical lumens and theoretical throw. So I hope that gave you a very short introduction to how I decide on what lights go in my loadout. Yes, I do use those big searchlights, typically in a more wide open urban setting. Like I said, Russell Creek Park in Plano. I probably need to go film a segment on that. But for general wilderness applications, again, I like to think of myself as being inside a 200-yard bubble. And I try to gravitate towards equipment that is, very lightweight, very rugged, very dependable. I have a lot of previous experience with PowerTac. In fact, I still have the E5 that I used back in my bodyguard days 6 years ago. It's great. You click the switch, it turns on. You click the switch, it turns off. I've been doing that for nearly 6 years now, and it still works like a champ. So those are the things that are most important to me in lighting systems. And I hope you'll stick around, go through the second part of the evaluation. We will be at the LBJ grasslands outside of Decatur, and we will take this unit out and use it in an actual search and rescue training exercise. Thanks for sticking with me for so long.